Hi, I'm Jeff from New York. Please like and subscribe.
Young Billionaire, Season 2, Episode 30, No One Can Be Rude to My Sister. Violet agreed immediately. When she heard where they were going to eat, she said,
Yellow Garden, that's a really famous restaurant. I've heard that. It's really fancy. Let's go.
John pulled Jeff toward him and whispered anxiously,
What are you doing to Robin? He's only got a little over $200 left to pay for dinner in their hotel. It will be terrible if he takes the girls to Yellow Garden and can't pay the bill. What do you want him to do? I'll be so embarrassed in front of his sister and her friend.
I know, don't worry. Do you really think I would do anything to hurt Robin?
Jeff comforted John. To him, Yellow Garden was only a mediocre restaurant. He originally wanted to take everyone to De Lucas or Caf Adriatico as a treat. But he realized that these were too exclusive and places that Robin could never afford. He felt the best choice was Yellow Garden.
It's fine, let's go.
He reassured Robin as he patted his shoulder.
Robin, are you going to treat us at Yellow Garden?
Joyce asked. She was his sister, and she could tell something was worrying him. He pretended to be relaxed as he smiled and replied, Of course, Yellow Garden is really good. I'll take you guys, and you can see what you think. Inside he was panicking. How can I refuse? Now I've got to pretend everything's alright, but I've only got $200 on me. What the hell am I going to do when we get there? The girls jumped into one cab and the boys went into another. They all headed to the restaurant. Without the girls present, Robin could stop pretending. He could be honest with his friends. Jeff, what are you trying to do to me? You know I don't have enough money, he said in a panic.
This is my card, and there's still $500 on it. It's yours.
John said, handing a bank card to Robin. The money on it, it was for his living expenses. But his friend was in trouble, so he was happy for him to have it.
No need. Both of you listen. I've told you I've got a plan. Robin won't be embarrassed in front of the girls.
Jeff smiled and continued.
Robin, let everyone order whatever they want. When we settle the bill, we'll go together to pay, and we'll use my bank card.
He took out his Supreme Metro bank card, waved it in front of them quickly, and then put it into his pocket. He didn't want his friends to look too carefully at the card and recognize it. Everyone knew that to have an account there, you needed $1 million, and that $3 million was needed to open a Supreme account. Robin and John looked at Jeff in confusion. John asked,
Jeff, how much money have you got on your card? Where's the money from? You're usually struggling for money even more than us.
Deep down, they didn't believe him. He rubbed his nose and said,
I've got around $8,000 in the account. I was really lucky. Recently, bought 10 lottery tickets and won $8,000.
He still didn't want his friends to know his real identity. Even if he told them, they might not believe him. Hearing that Jeff had $8,000, his friends were relieved. They teased him a little for not telling them about the lottery win. Soon they arrived at the Yellow Garden. It was a beautiful old building. There were a lot of luxury cars parked in front, and it was from the upper echelons of New York society. Robin and John had never been to such a high-class establishment. When they saw a group of well-dressed people walk past them, they were bewildered for a moment. Luckily, Jeff took control and led them into the restaurant. Once seated, under Jeff's reassuring gaze, Robin mustered up his courage and ordered 10 different specialties and ordered 2 expensive bottles of red wine. According to the menu, he had already spent $600. Violet was very happy when she looked at the dishes on the table. She looked at Joyce and said,
See, I knew that Robin was going to treat us to a good meal tonight. This place is way more luxurious than any restaurant at home.
Of course, he's my brother. Let's take some photos for Instagram. Our friends will be so jealous.
Joyce said as she held up her cell phone to take a picture of the restaurant. Everyone relaxed, smiled at the photo. The meal went very well. They all enjoyed their food and chatted amicably. Happy laughs were heard from time to time. After the main course, Jeff stood up and said to everyone,
You guys carry on. I need to go to the bathroom.
He walked toward the restrooms. As he walked, Ariel and Haley popped into his mind. Kyle reported that the Shadow Reapers were still looking for Victor Doom, and he was worried that they would go to Ariel's home. He was relieved that he had ordered Kyle to send someone to collect Ariel and Haley and take them to stay in a safe place. They probably took them to either the Secret Garden guest house or to the Berkeley Hotel. While Jeff was in the bathroom, a group of rowdy youths entered Yellow Garden. The leader was a young man with his hair shaved on both sides and a tattoo on his head. He was hugging a pretty girl. The young man was called Dave Wilkinson, and his father was another one of Shadow Reaper's leaders. Because the Shadow Reapers had taken control of New York's underworld, Dave's status had risen along with it, and everyone wanted to befriend him.
Dave, thanks for treating us today. How many people are coming?
I only called Jasper. He said he was nearby and would be here soon. It's good if there's less people. I can't stand all those ass lickers. You're right, of course. Right now everyone in New York wants to be seen with you. We feel very honored that you chose us.
They spoke in very loud and brash voices and didn't care at all if they upset the other diners. None of the customers dared to say anything. Finally, the manager went up to them with a smile to take their orders. They had attracted the attention of the entire restaurant the moment they entered the door. When they saw this group of people, Reuben and John were dismayed. What are they doing here? Reuben complained. He recognized two of the young men as the two hooligans who had harassed Joyce at the airport. Reuben put his head in his hands. John also lowered his head. He felt uneasy and didn't want the men to see them. There were 6 or 7 thugs in the group. The young man with the shaved head seemed to be their leader, and he looked formidable. Reuben and John prayed that they would not recognize them as they passed. Then they heard,
"Hang on, Dave. I think I saw 2 familiar faces."
When they got closer and saw Reuben, the 2 hoodlums recognized him. Then Reuben heard a familiar voice saying,
Kevin, Rich, are they the ones that beat you up?
He saw another youth walking over, and a chill went up his spine. Although Steve Phillips was a university student, he had no interest in studying at all. He often hung out outside of school, and after a chance encounter, he befriended Dave and became one of his followers. Under the influence of her mother, his girlfriend Andrea had dumped him. Steve turned his gaze toward Reuben. For a moment, the two of them locked eyes. It was the first time that Steve had ever looked directly at any of them. He said,
I know these guys, Dave, Kevin, Rich, let me introduce them to you. They're in my class. They're nobodies, just a couple of losers. They're so poor they can hardly afford to eat. Once when my class went on a trip to the Stall Island, we all decided to go out for dinner. These 2 punks and their buddy Jeff couldn't even afford a meal. They sat outside on a bench eating fries. They didn't like it when I took a photo of them for Instagram.
Ha ha ha.
laughed one of his companions.
They're that poor.
Asked another. The first man said,
That's not much better than the people on the street begging for food.
Dave and his lackeys laughed loudly. Listening to Steve, Joyce and Violet were shocked.
Reuben was doing very well in New York. Why did this man say he was a loser who couldn't afford to eat? Was Ben lying, or was this boy making it up?
But he's wearing designer clothes right now and he's eating it here.
Kevin said. Then he pointed toward Joyce and Violet and continued.
And these 2 pretty girls are keeping him company.
My guess is that he spent a month's worth of living expenses on the clothes he's wearing.
Steve didn't believe that Reuben had the money to buy decent clothes.
I'm amazed he found the money to bring a date here. He must be planning to spend every cent he has tonight, then live on dirt next semester.
His words caused another wave of laughter.
Ladies, what are you doing with worthless trash like Reuben?
One of his friends joked. Steve smiled at Joyce and Brittany and said,
Maybe he tricked you with his romantic words. Do you actually believe he's wealthy, or could it all just be an act?
Reuben felt so ashamed to be insulted by Steve in front of his sister to be called worthless. He wanted to beat him up, but there were too many of Steve's friends there, so he stayed quiet. He felt so ashamed that he clenched his fists and wanted to find a hole to hide in.
Have you got anything to say? Aren't you 2 even going to stick up for yourselves? You are worthless pieces of crap.
Kevin spat out and started walking toward them with Rich. Reuben and John were both frightened when they saw them approaching. They didn't dare to move, but just sat on their chairs with their heads lowered.
What are you talking about with these 2 pieces of scum?
Rich said as he kicked Reuben's and John's seats, so they both fell to the ground.
Stand up!
Steve shouted, and Reuben and John stood up.
Rich, these clothes would look good on you.
Kevin pulled out a knife and grabbed Ben's shirt, ready to cut it open. Reuben tried to back off. These were the most expensive and best clothes he had ever worn in his life. He cherished them greatly and didn't want to lose them.
You little shit. If you keep moving, I'll cut you to pieces.
Kevin roared. With a single slash, a big hole appeared in Roybin's shirt. Roybin looked at his cut shirt and felt his heart ache. He was hoping he could wear it if he attended any important events over the next few years. Now he could never wear it again.
Ha ha ha, look at how weak that guy is. He's not even standing up for himself. What a loser.
Kevin laughed. Kevin kicked Roybin's chest. He fell back, knocked over their table and fell onto the ground. At the same time, John was kicked to the ground by Rich. Violet, like most of the other girls at the restaurant, was screaming loudly. Joyce, on the other hand, rushed to help Roybin up.
These two girls are pretty good looking.
Dave let go of his girlfriend and looked at Joyce. He reached out his hand to pinch her butt.
Please don't.
Joyce backed off in fright. She could sense how dangerous this group of men was.
Come to me, pretty girl.
Dave wrapped his arms around Joyce's neck and was about to pull her into his embrace.
Help.
She screamed. At that moment, they all heard a shout. Don't touch her. At the same moment, Corey let out a blood-curdling howl.
Aw.
Something had slammed into the back of his head. He bent down with his head in his hands and took a few steps back. He finally let go of Joyce. Are you okay? Roybin asked with concern as he hugged Joyce. When he had seen Dave grabbing her, he hadn't hesitated. He had rushed over and thumped him over the head. He could tolerate being humiliated himself, but there was no way he could let someone threaten his sister. No, not even the president would be allowed to touch his sister.